The Aftermath of Us, Chapters 10 and 11. Chapter 10, Moving Forward. The weeks following Mark's phone call brought a sense of clarity and purpose that Alara hadn't expected. Rather than creating doubt, his attempt to re-enter their lives had only reinforced how right her choice had been. Marcus wasn't just a rebound or a convenient replacement. He was the partner she'd never known she needed, the father figure Leo had been missing, and the love she'd thought she might never find again. November arrived with a crisp bite in the air and the promise of holidays ahead. Leo had started asking about Thanksgiving, having learned about it at daycare, and his questions had led to conversations that felt both exciting and terrifying in their implications. "Will Marcus come to our Thanksgiving?" Leo had asked one evening while Alara was giving him his bath. "Would you like him to?" she'd replied, though her heart was already racing at the thought. "Yes. And can we make turkey like the Pilgrims?" Alara had laughed, but the question had stayed with her. They'd never hosted a holiday before. It had always been just the two of them, maybe with Sarah if she wasn't visiting her own family. The idea of creating traditions, of building something lasting and meaningful, felt both wonderful and overwhelming. She'd brought it up with Marcus during one of their evening phone calls after Leo was asleep. "He wants you to come for Thanksgiving," she'd said without preamble. "And what do you want?" Marcus had asked, his voice warm with affection. "I want you to come. I want us to start building traditions together. I want—" She'd paused, gathering courage. "I want to stop being afraid of planning for the future." "Then let's plan," Marcus had said simply. "What do you need me to bring?" It was such a Marcus response, practical, supportive, no drama or overthinking. Just a willingness to step into whatever she needed him to be. The planning had become a joint effort that revealed new depths to their partnership. Marcus had volunteered to handle the turkey, admitting with endearing sheepishness that he'd been watching YouTube videos to learn proper roasting techniques. Alara would make the sides, and Leo had been assigned the crucial task of helping with everything, which mostly involved taste testing and providing running commentary. But it was the conversation about guest lists that had surprised her. "What about your family?" Alara had asked during one of their planning sessions. They were sitting at her kitchen table, Leo coloring nearby while they made lists and checked recipes. Marcus had been quiet for a moment, his pen stilling on the paper. "I'd love for you to meet them," he'd said finally. "But Portland is a long way to travel with Leo, and I know money's tight." The casual way he acknowledged her financial constraints without making her feel ashamed about them was just another example of his thoughtfulness. But it was what he said next that made her heart skip. "Actually, I've been thinking about asking them to come here. My mom's been wanting to meet you both, and my sister's been threatening to drive down anyway if I don't stop talking about you long enough to arrange a proper introduction." "You talk about us?" Alara had asked, warmth spreading through her chest. "Constantly," Marcus had admitted with a grin, "to the point where my colleagues have started asking when they get to meet the famous Leo and his amazing mom." The idea of meeting Marcus's family should have been terrifying. Instead, Alara found herself excited by the prospect. She wanted to meet the people who had shaped the man she'd fallen in love with. She wanted them to see the life they'd built together, to understand that this wasn't just a casual relationship, but something real and lasting. "Invite them," she'd said, surprising herself with her certainty. "I'd love to meet them." Marcus's smile had been radiant. "Really? You're sure? My mom can be a little intense, and my sister will probably interrogate you about your intentions toward her baby brother." "I can handle intense," Alara had said, thinking of all the challenges she'd already overcome. "And my intentions are entirely honorable." "Good to know," Marcus had replied, leaning over to kiss her temple, "because mine aren't entirely honorable at all." The comment had made her blush and laugh at the same time, but it had also sparked something deeper, a conversation they'd been dancing around for weeks. Later that evening, after Leo was asleep and they were curled up on her couch watching a movie neither of them was really paying attention to, Alara had found the courage to broach the subject that had been on her mind. "Marcus," she'd said, turning in his arms to face him, "where do you see this going?" He'd muted the television and given her his full attention, his expression serious. What do you mean? I mean, we've been together for almost 2 months now. We're planning holidays together. You're meeting my friends. I'm about to meet your family. Leo calls you when he has nightmares. You have a drawer in my dresser and a toothbrush in my bathroom. She'd paused, gathering courage. I guess I'm asking if you see this as temporary or permanent, Marcus had finished softly. She'd nodded, her heart hammering against her ribs. Marcus had been quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm. Can I tell you something that might sound crazy? Please. I knew on our first date, at the museum, when Leo fell asleep against me during the hayride, and you looked at us like we were something precious. I knew then that I wanted this to be my life. You and Leo, building something together. I know it's fast, I know it's probably too soon to be thinking about forever, but... But? Alara had prompted, her voice barely a whisper. But I can't imagine my life without you both in it anymore. I don't want to imagine it. The words had hung in the air between them, loaded with promise and possibility. Alara had felt tears prick at her eyes. Not sad tears, but the kind that came from overwhelming gratitude and joy. It doesn't feel too fast to me, she'd said quietly. It feels like coming home. Marcus had kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they'd broken apart, both breathing hard, he'd rested his forehead against hers. So where do I see this going? He'd said, echoing her original question. I see us building a life together. I see Leo growing up knowing he's loved and wanted. I see more holidays and birthdays and ordinary Tuesday nights. I see us figuring out how to blend our lives completely, not just dating but actually becoming a family. A family? Alara had repeated, testing the word on her tongue. It had felt right in a way that surprised her. If that's what you want, Marcus had said, suddenly uncertain. I know it's a big step, and I don't want to pressure you. It's what I want, Alara had interrupted, her voice strong with conviction. It's what we both want. As if summoned by their conversation, Leo's voice had drifted from his bedroom. Mama? I had a bad dream? They'd looked at each other and smiled, the moment perfectly encapsulating what their life together looked like. Interrupted, chaotic, real, and absolutely perfect. I'll go, Marcus had said, already standing. We'll both go, Alara had corrected, taking his hand. They'd found Leo sitting up in his toddler bed, his hair sticking up at odd angles, and his stuffed triceratops clutched to his chest. What was the dream about, buddy? Marcus had asked, settling on the edge of the bed while Alara smoothed Leo's hair. There was a big scary dinosaur, but not a nice one like at the museum. A mean one. Well, Marcus had said seriously, it's a good thing you have Spike here to protect you. Triceratops are very brave, you know. Really? Really? And you know what else? Leo had shaken his head, his eyes wide. Mama and I are right here too. We won't let any scary dinosaurs get you. Promise? Promise, Marcus and Alara had said in unison, and Leo had smiled, his fears already fading. As they'd tucked him back in, Leo had reached for both of their hands. I love you, Mama. I love you, Marcus. We love you too, sweetheart, Alara had whispered, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. Walking back to the living room hand in hand, Alara had felt something settle in her chest, a peace and certainty she'd never experienced before. This was what family felt like. This was what home meant. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of losing it. Chapter 11. Thanksgiving. Revelations. Thanksgiving morning dawned gray and drizzly, but the weather couldn't dampen the excitement that had been building in their small apartment for days. Leo had been awake since dawn, chattering about Turkey Day and asking approximately every 5 minutes when Marcus's family would arrive. Alara had been up almost as early, her stomach a tangle of nerves and anticipation. She'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on a burgundy sweater dress that was nice enough for meeting potential in-laws but practical enough for cooking and chasing a toddler. The apartment had been cleaned to within an inch of its life, and she'd rearranged the furniture twice to accommodate more people in their small space. Marcus had arrived at 8 with his arms full of grocery bags and a smile that immediately calmed her nerves. "You look beautiful," he'd said, kissing her cheek before setting down the bags. "And something smells incredible." "That's the sweet potato casserole," Alara had replied, checking the oven for the third time in 10 minutes. "Are you sure your mom won't mind eating in such a small space? We could have gotten a table at a restaurant." "Alara." Marcus had taken her hands, stilling her nervous fidgeting. "My mom raised 2 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment for 3 years. She's not going to judge you for anything, least of all the size of your home. She's just excited to meet the woman who's made her son happier than she's ever seen him." "Marcus!" Leo had come barreling out of his room, still in his dinosaur pajamas despite Alara's attempts to get him dressed. "Did you bring the turkey?" "I did indeed," Marcus had said, solemnly, producing a perfectly golden brown bird from one of the bags. "What do you think?" Leo had examined the turkey with the seriousness of a food critic. "It looks good. Did you tell it thank you?" "Thank you?" Marcus had looked confused. "For being our dinner," Leo had explained patiently. "Mama says we should always say thank you." Marcus had looked at Alara with an expression of pure adoration before turning back to Leo. "You're absolutely right. Thank you, turkey, for being our Thanksgiving dinner." Leo had nodded approvingly and scampered back to his room, presumably to continue avoiding getting dressed. "He's incredible," Marcus had said, pulling Alara into his arms. "You're incredible. This whole day is going to be incredible." And despite her nerves, Alara had found herself believing him. Marcus's family had arrived at noon sharp, his mother, Dr. Helen Chen, a petite woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and his sister, Amy, a younger version of Marcus with the same warm smile and easy laugh. They'd come bearing flowers, wine, and what appeared to be enough dessert to feed a small army. "You must be Alara," Helen had said, immediately pulling her into a warm hug that smelled like vanilla and something comfortingly maternal. "I've heard so much about you, dear, and this must be the famous Leo." Leo, who had finally been coaxed into his fancy clothes, khakis and a button-down shirt with dinosaurs on it, had hidden behind Alara's legs for approximately 30 seconds before Amy had crouched down to his level. "Leo, I heard you're an expert on dinosaurs," she'd said conspiratorially. "I brought something I thought you might like." She'd produced a small wrapped package, and Leo's shyness had evaporated instantly. Inside was a book about paleontology, complete with pop-up dinosaur skeletons that had made Leo gasp with delight. "This is the best book ever," he'd announced, immediately plopping down on the floor to examine every page. "I think you've made a friend for life," Alara had said to Amy, who had grinned. "Marcus warned me about the dinosaur obsession. I figured I should come prepared." The afternoon had unfolded with an ease that surprised Alara. Helen had insisted on helping in the kitchen, sharing stories about Marcus's childhood while they worked together to finish the meal. Amy had appointed herself Leo's official playmate, building elaborate block towers and reading dinosaur books with the patience of someone who genuinely enjoyed children. But it was the quiet moments that had meant the most. When Helen had found the photo of Leo's first steps that Alara kept on the refrigerator and had asked to hear the story. When Amy had noticed Leo's artwork taped to the walls and had praised each piece with genuine enthusiasm. When Marcus had caught Alara's eye across the room and smiled with such contentment that her heart had skipped. Dinner itself had been a revelation. Their small table, extended with a card table borrowed from Sarah, had been crowded but cozy. Leo had insisted on sitting between Marcus and Amy, chattering throughout the meal about everything from dinosaurs to his favorite color, currently purple like his cast had been, to his plans to be a paleontologist when he grew up. "And Marcus is going to help me dig up bones," Leo had announced around a mouthful of mashed potatoes. "Is he now?" Helen had asked, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Yep, he knows about bones because he's a doctor, and he makes really good dinosaur voices." "I'd love to hear these dinosaur voices," Amy had said, grinning at her brother. Marcus had obliged with a T-Rex roar that had made Leo dissolve into giggles and had earned him a round of applause from the table. It was during dessert, Helen's famous apple pie alongside Amy's chocolate cake, that the conversation had taken a more serious turn. Elara, Helen had said, setting down her fork and looking directly at her. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I haven't seen Marcus this happy in, well, ever. Elara had felt heat rise in her cheeks. He makes us happy too. Both of us. It shows, Amy had added. Leo clearly adores him, and the way Marcus talks about you both. She'd shaken her head with a smile. I was starting to think my brother was going to be a bachelor forever. Amy, Marcus had warned, but he'd been smiling. What? It's true. You've been dating for years, but you've never brought anyone home for the holidays. You've never talked about anyone the way you talk about Elara and Leo. Helen had reached across the table to squeeze Alara's hand. What Amy's trying to say, in her typically subtle way, is that we can see how much you all mean to each other, and we're grateful that you've welcomed Marcus into your family. He's welcomed us into his, Elara had replied, her voice thick with emotion. I never expected... after Leo's father left, I thought it would just be the two of us. I never imagined we'd find someone who would love us both so completely. Love has a way of finding us when we least expect it, Helen had said softly. And when it's real, when it's right, it doesn't matter how it happens or how quickly. What matters is what you do with it. Later, after the dishes were done and Leo was showing off his dinosaur collection to his captive audience, Elara had found herself alone in the kitchen with Helen. He's going to ask you to marry him, Helen had said without preamble, her voice matter-of-fact. Elara had nearly dropped the dish towel she'd been holding. What? Marcus. He's going to propose. Probably soon. Helen had smiled at Elara's shocked expression. He asked for his grandmother's ring last month. Had it resized and everything? What? Elara's mind had been reeling. I hope that doesn't upset you. I probably shouldn't have said anything, but I wanted you to know that this family, we don't take these things lightly. When Marcus gives you that ring, it's not just a proposal. It's a promise that you and Leo will always have a place with us. Elara had felt tears prick at her eyes. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, dear. Just, when the time comes, know that you're not just getting a husband. You're getting a family who already loves you. The conversation had been interrupted by Leo's delighted laughter from the living room, but Helen's words had stayed with Elara for the rest of the evening. As they'd said their goodbyes and made plans for Christmas, as Marcus had helped her clean up and put Leo to bed, as they'd finally collapsed on the couch together in the quiet aftermath of a perfect day, those words had echoed in her mind. Your family is wonderful, she'd said, curled against Marcus's side. They love you, Marcus had replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Almost as much as I do. Helen said something interesting, Elara had said carefully, testing the waters. Oh no, what did my mother say? She said you asked for your grandmother's ring. Marcus had gone very still beneath her. She told you that? Should she not have? Marcus had been quiet for a long moment, and Elara had felt her heart start to race. Had she misunderstood? Had Helen been wrong? I was going to wait until Christmas, Marcus had said finally. I had this whole plan. Leo was going to help me ask. There was going to be a tree and lights, and it was going to be perfect. Marcus. But maybe perfect isn't about the setting, he'd continued, shifting so he could look at her. Maybe perfect is just about the moment being right. And then he'd been sliding off the couch, reaching into his jacket pocket, and Elara's breath had caught in her throat as he'd dropped to one knee beside the coffee table. Elara Vance, he'd said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You and Leo have given me everything I never knew I was missing. You've made me a better man, a happier man, a man who believes in forever. I love you both more than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone. He'd opened the small velvet box, revealing a simple, elegant ring that caught the lamplight and threw it back in tiny rainbows. Will you marry me? Will you let me be Leo's dad and your husband and the luckiest man in the world? Elara had looked at him. This man who'd brought dinosaur books and patient answers to her son's endless questions, who'd held her while she cried about medical bills and never once suggested her problems were too much, who'd seamlessly woven himself into the fabric of their lives until she couldn't imagine existing without him, and had felt her heart overflow with certainty. "Yes," she'd whispered, then louder. "Yes, of course, yes." The ring had slid onto her finger like it belonged there, and Marcus had kissed her with such joy and relief that they'd both been laughing and crying at the same time. "Mama, Marcus, why are you loud?" They'd turned to find Leo standing in the hallway, rubbing his eyes and looking confused by all the commotion. "Come here, buddy," Marcus had said, and Leo had padded over in his dinosaur pajamas. "Leo," Alara had said, kneeling down to his level, "Marcus asked me to marry him. Do you know what that means?" Leo had considered this seriously. "Like in the princess movies?" "Sort of like that. It means Marcus would become part of our family forever. He'd be your daddy if you want him to be." Leo had looked between them, his expression thoughtful. "Would you still make dinosaur voices?" "Every day," Marcus had promised solemnly. "And help me reach tall things?" "Whenever you need me to." "And love Mama? Forever and always." Leo had nodded decisively. "Okay, you can marry Mama." And as they'd sat there on the living room floor, the three of them wrapped in an impromptu group hug, Alara had felt the last piece of her heart click into place. This was her family. This was her future. This was the life she'd never dared to dream of, and it was finally, beautifully, perfectly hers.